Thank you, Jason. And I would also like to express my appreciation to Jason and Jeff for putting this program on. These guys have done a great job. Thank you. You know, when Jason and Jeff shared with me the topic of tonight's conversation, I was immediately reminded of a story, a very old Chinese story about a farmer who lived in a poor country village. This farmer was viewed by his neighbors as relatively well off because he owned a horse. He used the horse for plowing. He used the horse for transportation. And one day, the horse ran away. And his neighbors exclaimed how sorry they were for his plight and his circumstances. And the farmer merely replied, maybe. But 2 or 3 days later, the horse returned and brought with him 2 wild horses. And the neighbors exclaimed how fabulous it was, what a great thing had happened to the farmer, and how pleased he must be to now have 3 horses. And the farmer just said, maybe. The next day, his son, attempting to ride one of the wild horses, fell off the horse and broke his leg. And the neighbors came back to the farmer and said how sorry they were that his son broke his leg and what a great misfortune he had had. And the farmer just said, maybe. And the following week, conscription officers came to the village to conscript the young men in the village to put them in the army. And because his son had a broken leg, he was not taken away to the army. And the neighbors once again said how fortunate the farmer was that he had had this misfortune for his son that turned into this great positive thing. And the farmer just said, maybe. This story illustrates how the meaning of events are shaped by the frame within which we perceive those events. Things that we may see as negative may in fact be perceived as positive things. And when we look at the events in our lives and the external circumstances that we find ourselves in, we may look at those things in one way or another, and it has a dramatic impact on what's going on with the outcomes in our lives and our own behavior. And when I reflect on this topic, this economy and you, the part of this topic tonight, this economy, it is not a pretty picture. But the part of this topic, you, may in fact be a very pretty picture. And what I would like to do is share some thoughts with you about both of these items. This economy. We are today in the Central Valley of California experiencing the convergence of 2 great historic forces. The first is a force associated with the exhaustion of the underpinnings of what has been our agribusiness economy and the implications of that. And the second is the impact of a national economic crisis that has been called, and I think you've probably all read this, the Great Recession, right? If the national economy was in the same shape as the economy here in the Central Valley, this would not be called the Great Recession. This would be called the Second Great Depression. You know, Jason and Jeff were talking about the 10% national unemployment rate. We have 19.5% unemployment rate in Stanislaus County today. And that's just the government-created number. The real number is substantially higher than that, as they indicated as well. So what's going on? In the last 250 years, this valley, 250 years ago, this valley was a wildlife refuge. And it was transformed from a wildlife refuge into cattle range. It was transformed from cattle range into wheat fields. It was transformed from wheat fields into small farms. And it was transformed from an area that was represented primarily by small farms into corporate factories in the fields, what we now call agribusiness. And think of this beautiful facility, the Gallo Center for the Performing Arts, a generous donation of an agribusiness family. The Foster Theater in the Gallo Center for the Performing Arts, a generous gift of an agribusiness family. The Rogers Theater in the Gallo Center for the Performing Arts, a generous gift of an agribusiness family. But the agribusiness economy that has been the primary driving force behind what's going on here in the valley is predicated not only on the existence of some of the greatest soils on the planet, but exists because we have had cheap land, cheap water, and cheap labor. The existence of these three factors, cheap land, cheap water, and cheap labor, have allowed the farmers and agribusiness interests here in the valley on 1% of the farmland in America to produce 8% of all of the farm products in the United States. A tremendous achievement. But now that the availability of cheap land, cheap water, and cheap labor is going away, we're going to be going through a period of transition in which the agribusiness interests in this valley are going to need to share the stage with some other types of activities, and we'll be once again entering a new chapter in the history of our valley. Sadly, we do not appear to be in a really good position to take advantage of future opportunities. I mean, one would think, with the proximity of the Central Valley to the Bay Area, that this would be an outstanding location to have a knowledge-based economy emerged alongside of a continued strong presence of agribusiness. But a knowledge-based economy requires well-educated, highly skilled individuals. And one of the dark sides of an agribusiness economy, frankly, is that we have in our Central Valley a population, the education attainment level of which is probably among the lowest in the United States of America. We have 50% fewer of our children attend college than other parts of the state. We have one of the highest levels of poverty in the state. We have some of the highest levels of dropout in the state. And overall, our population is ill-suited for a knowledge-based economy. So while the underpinnings of the economy here in the valley start to erode and the opening takes place for a new type of economy to emerge, we appear to be ill-suited for what might best be called a knowledge-based economy, and simultaneously, we now face a national economic crisis. So what is that all about? You've probably heard about the jobless recovery. We have to sort out, when you hear about the economy, you have to sort out cyclical activities from secular activities, things that go up and down and come back, and things that are fundamentally restructuring the game. And the fundamental restructure on the national level is similar to what we're facing here in the region. And that is that this country has gone through a serious crisis. We appear to be emerging from that crisis, but people who are not skilled and who are not educated are going to be left at the side of the road. They're going to be left at the side of the road because while they're sitting around watching television tonight, millions and millions and millions of people in other countries are studying, learning, and becoming educated, and are becoming intense competitors for the products and services that otherwise could have been provided here.